Hey, y'all. Clint Shamblin here with Locked On Bulldogs here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're talking receivers at Georgia for 2022 and why they just might be top 3 receiving group of all time at Georgia. More after this.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How you doing? Welcome to Locked On Bulldogs here on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, part of Locked On Atlanta, as well as the Hawks and the Braves and all the good stuff Braves right here. Okay. World Series championship Braves, no mullet, not Alabama. This is Locked On Bulldogs. We talk like fans talk, just like you do around a water cooler, around a tailgate, whatever that is, wherever you get your social interaction with other friends. That's how Daniel, my co-host, who would be here today, and yes, scheduling is scheduling as it is. We'll be back next week, him and I together, and we've been breaking down this offseason. What's been really, really crucial to us about this upcoming season and how position groups might be able to be graded compared to last year. So we're talking about wide receivers today. He did offensive line yesterday. We might have the best offensive line group as a cohesive unit. Again, Andrew Thomas, best lineman ever to come through Georgia. The Siscom brothers, all of that. Yes, certainly. However, as a unit, this team is going to be better than it was last year, which is hard to do. And the wide receiver group might just be exactly like that. If you like what we do, follow us on this YouTube channel. If you're over on the audio side, thanks for doing so. Subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review, just like I'm about to give you a rating and review of the wide receiver group. So let's get to it. We want to talk about who these wide receivers are replacing, who the new guys are, so who they're replacing, who the new guys are, and then finally what my grade is. And I'm going to run down last year's group. And I'm going to do receivers kind of oddly. We're going to talk about tight ends here as well, but wide receivers or receiver group is hard because while James Cook was 4th on the team last year in receptions, he wasn't a receiver yet. He contributed to the receiving game. Kearis Jackson was down on the depth chart because of injury and a couple other things, and even in the statistical charts. And you guys got Brock Bowers, who was all SEC, all everything, best player, offensive weapon in the entire country. Is he a tight end or a receiver? He flexed out a little bit. Eric Gilbert, Big O. So it's kind of hard. So I'm taking with a grain of salt. So instead of just saying, hey, we're not going to include tight ends to this, I'm going to say yes. In the sets that Todd Monken has, we include tight ends as receivers, as options on the outside. So with that being said, I'm including Brock Bowers and Eric Gilbert. I'm not going to include Big O because Big O is very, very, very typical inline tight end. He does flex out. So Georgia fan, hear me. He does flex out, but not as much, not as a highest percentage as Eric Gilbert as well as Brock Bowers. So I'm going to include them in this just like I did last year. So here's who was the leaders of the wide receiver group or receiving at Georgia last year. Of course, Brock Bowers had over 880 yards, 13 touchdowns, best offensive player in all of college football. I don't care. He's a freak. Ladd McConkey, second on the team, 31 receptions. A.D. Mitchell, 29 receptions. James Cook, 27 receptions. Burton, 26 receptions. Kenny McIntosh, 22. Kearis Jackson, 16. Darnell Washington, 10. And then from there on out, it goes down. George Pickens comes back at the end of the season, plays clearly in the championship game as well as in the playoff run. So I get we don't have George anymore. He's gone. We don't have Burton. He's over at Alabama. But look at the guys that we're returning and getting more of. So the guys that we're replacing, a lot of them we're not replacing. We're not replacing Ladd McConkey. We're not replacing AD. We're not replacing Kenny Mack. We're not replacing Kearis Jackson. We're not replacing Darnell Washington. We're not replacing Brock Bowers. I just said I wasn't going to include Darnell in this. But we're not replacing because we got Eric Gilbert. So of the people we're replacing, it's simply Burton and Jorge was gone for most of the year. So you can even say we're not really replacing him. Now, of that group I just listed to you, George Pickens might well be the most talented wide receiver we have ever seen at Georgia. Hands down, it's not close. Stop. full stop. He's the most talented wide receiver we've ever seen at Georgia. He played that out. Injury stopped him, unfortunately, from playing more games than he could have or should have. But based upon a pure talent perspective, he's the best one we've ever had. He's going to be tough to replace for what he does. But again, we're not replacing him so much because he was an addition the last couple games of the season, and we had already replaced him with aforementioned players. Burton, we have to replace him. That is true, but I think he was already replaced, thus the transfer to another team. He was being replaced. He was on his way out. He was not getting the receptions because he wasn't good enough to get the receptions because Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, Kyrus Jackson, soon to be discussed Don Blaylock were getting those. So overall, of George Pickens, of Burton, of McConkey, of AD, Rosemary Jackson, I get he's there, but he was down. Arian Smith was hurt a lot of the year. Here's what I would give them for last year. If I was giving them a statistical grade, 0 to 99, because no such thing as 100, I'm going to give this wide receiver group last year, for not the end of the season, but the whole season, a 90. And that is buoyed a lot because Brock Bowers plays half his snaps over there and half in line. He's flexed out a little bit on Todd Monken's system. So I'm going to give him a 90. And that's hard because they were really good. But I don't think for large stretches of the season, they showed themselves out a little bit in spurts. But this offense was efficient, was effective, was explosive, and the wide receivers were much to do with it. But we didn't have George for a lot of the season. Burton didn't show out. Arian Smith was hurt. Ladd, AD really showed out. Brock Bowers is part of that tight end. Again, why it's weighted down. He's only half the snaps I'm including into this grade. So I'm going to give him a 90. We're going to come back after this, talk about what I think is a much better wide receiver group. But first, I want to let you know about BetOnline. BetOnline is your sportsbook experts. How do we know? Because Daniel and I trust them as our sportsbook experts. And BetOnline is the official. Now listen, y'all. I say official because they are the official and one and only sportsbook of Locked On Podcasts as well as Locked On Bulldogs. We love them. We trust them. They are safe. They are efficient. They are straight to the point on their outline on the web portal, on getting money in and giving money out. Quick, easy, convenient. BetOnline is your sportsbook experts. Don't go to Sal down in the corner in a diner with a notebook. That's going to end badly for everybody. Instead, go over to our friends, betonline.net, your sportsbook experts, and the only place Daniel and I trust to do parlays, straight up, season win totals, over-unders, and the whole gamut. We're going to be giving out locks in season. Come back for those and take your money over to BetOnline, your sportsbook experts. All right, so what am I thinking this next year is going to do? If 90 was last year and we had exceptional wide receivers last year, but again, injury and time, what do I think this year? I think this year, I'm going to come out of the gate and tell you what I think the wide receivers are going to be this year. I think it's going to be 94, 95 this year. Now, that's quite a jump from last year, and a lot of these guys are coming back. Again, Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, Kenny Mack, Kyrus Jackson. But look at the guys we are getting on top of that, okay? Arian Smith, healthy. Now, is he going to stay healthy the whole season? I don't know. Maybe, possibly. Who knows? Don Blaylock, is he back and healthy? It seems that way. It seems that we're talking about him. It seems like Kirby's excited. It seems like the guys are excited. It seems like Don Blaylock is a force. And if you remember what he was 2 years ago, he was a guy that was almost Ladd McConkey-ish, almost, that he would pop behind the defense and really, really stretch out. He's not a straight burner like Arian Smith is. Arian Smith is just a track freak out there. He's not that. He's something else. Don Blaylock is a fantastic wide receiver. Has many, many skill sets. I really like his skill sets in this offense. He can do a little bit of everything, but really good at getting behind the defense, play action shots, catch and run with the ball, yards after contact. Don Blaylock is poised for a big, big season. I'm excited for it. And Kyrus Jackson is back. Ladd McConkey is back. Arian Smith is back. A.D. Mitchell is back. Rosemary Jackson is back. And again, you might say to yourself, oh, we're losing one of our better wide receiver options in Burton. We're not. The reason he is gone again is because he wasn't cutting it. And so we get those guys back. And then I get to add Brock Bowers and Eric Gilbert, because Eric Gilbert was listed as wide receiver until he had switched back to tight end. But if you don't think those two guys are going to flex out a lot, if you don't think those two guys are going to be off the line, if you don't think those two guys aren't going to line up maybe on the other side, closer to AD than they are Tate Ratledge, than they are McClendon, if you don't think their spacing is going to be closer to Ladd McConkey than those guys, you're fooling yourselves, because they will be, because Todd Monken's offense dictates that is the case a lot. So you add those guys, you add Eric Gilbert, 50% of his snaps, you add Brock Bowers is only going to get better. Dom Blaylock is back, healthy Arian Smith. Guys, this wide receiver group might be the most loaded wide receiver group we have had from a top to bottom perspective, giving me 50% of the tight ends. And that is saying something. That is incredible. That is huge. I'm going to give him a 94 for this coming year. And the ceiling could be astronomical. If Ladd keeps on developing, if Dom Blaylock comes back fully healthy, and as Kyrus Jackson was what he was to Stetson Bennett, the safety blanket over the middle where he trusts all the time, ooh, watch out. Now all of a sudden, we don't need to run so much. Now all of a sudden, we are chucking it all over the yard, which we have said we think we will do. Hey, come back after this, and I will tell you of this 94% what I expect, who might be leading on this team in certain categories. All right, what do I think is going to be the leader in the clubhouse for a lot of these statistical categories? Now, let me not bury the lead. Brock Bowers is going to be the best wide receiver, quote unquote, on this team. He's also going to be the best tight end. He's also going to be the best offensive player. He's also going to be the second best player overall, because Jalen Carter is still the best player for us and the entire country. But Brock Bowers is going to be statistically up there in receptions, in touchdowns, in yards. Do I anticipate a repeat of last year? I don't, just because, again, Eric Gilbert is back, now healthy, and he has some time to take care of some business. Do I think Dom Blaylock and Ladd McConkey and A.D. Mitchell continue to rep up? Yep. Do I think Rosemary Jack-Saint might take a step up? I do. That's a lot of balls flying over the place. And again, we don't force feed any player, so we're not going to force feed anybody, except maybe on a little slip screen to Brock Bowers in the national championship to go ahead up another score. Maybe that's the case from time to time, but that's not force feeding. That's taking what the defense is getting you and being an excellent play caller like Todd Monken is. So what do I think statistically? Again, Brock Bowers, I think across the board, if I was to give odds or money to place a bet on leader of receptions, yards, and touchdowns, I would choose Brock Bowers. I'm very high on Dom Blaylock this year. I think he's going to be somebody that gets his yards. I think he might be second or third. I think he might overtake Ladd McConkey as that person he was last year, as Ladd was last year. I think he might become 2 in yards. Receptions wise, Eric Gilbert's going to catch a lot of balls, y'all. He's going to catch a lot of balls. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's going to be close to Brock. I don't know if it's going to be close to Dom Blaylock, but he's going to catch a lot of balls. Touchdown leader, if you were giving me a second one, A.D. Mitchell is up there for me. I think A.D. continues to transcend up or continue to rise up the skills chart across all wide receivers in the SEC as well as in college football. I think he's going to be a really, really dang good one when all is said and done. So give me second A.D. Mitchell in touchdowns if I'm handicapping this thing. But y'all, I mean, would you take a bet that Kyrus Jackson isn't second in the team, first in the team in receptions? If you were to give me Brock in the field, depending on the juice you give me, I might take the field because Kyrus Jackson is over there, and he is that guy that can go out and catch 8 balls a game with Stetson, with the rapport, with the short intermediate passing game as well as long. If you're asking for average yards per catch, that's Arian Smith. If he stays healthy, and it's not even close. Guys, we are loaded at wide receivers. I think we're going to be exceptional. There's my statistical analysis, what I predict going on. Come back as of the season and yell at me down here in the comments for how stupid and foolish I am, because I love that. Truly, it's awesome. How you doing, Bama fan, by the way? Hey, this has been Locked On Bulldogs here on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will be back tomorrow with a special guest talking about them Croots. You will not want to miss it. See you then.